Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to this special edition webinar on how to get a buyer rep agreement signed every time. So this is Aaron Simons here in San Diego. For those of you that don't know me, I've been working here for Chris Heller for the last 11 years, helping him run his team. We average around 90 million in sales volume each year. And I'm also a MAPS coach, and I lead and train mega buyer agent skills. So what I want you guys to know is as I go through today's material, I'm in the trenches just like you, right? What I'm going to talk to you about, what I'm going to share with you about today is not theory, right? It's not what should happen. This is reality. This is what actually works, which is what we're seeing every day. It's also part of what I teach in Mega Agent Buyer Skills, which I'll share with you about a little bit later. But let's go ahead and jump into it. So here's what we're going to be looking at today. On this call, of course, number one is I want to share with you guys the importance of the buyer consultation. Whoops, let's get back to where we were. The importance of the buyer consultation, right? Why is it so important that we meet with the buyers ahead of time before we do anything, right? We need to lay some groundwork. I'm also going to go through with you guys the scripts for actually getting the buyers into the office instead of what we call the jump and run, meaning we go and we meet them at the property. I'll go through some tips for you on what the actual buyer consultation should look like. And then most importantly, on this fourth point, we're going to talk about your unique value proposition. I want you all to be clear why a buyer should choose to work with you, right? Why should they come and meet with you first before they go look at property? And then, of course, the meat of it, which is the actual buyer-broker agreement. So why is it so important to meet with them ahead of time? Here's what we know. When we meet with a buyer before anything happens, we will have a 75% conversion rate, right? 75% of the time, when that buyer crosses the threshold, they come into our office, they sit down with us, we will convert them into business 75% of the time. Now, if we don't do that, if we do what we call the jump and run, your conversion rate actually goes down to only 25%. And I'm going to run through an example here in just a minute, right? Because what happens is when you meet the buyers first, it's going to give you the opportunity to show them your value. In other words, why should they commit to working with you, right? And if we don't meet with them, we can't do that. See, on our team, and working for Chris for the last 11 years, we have a very simple philosophy. When it comes to buyers, we're going to treat every buyer lead the same as we would a seller lead. What do I mean by that? Well, think about this, right? Let's look at the scenario. Let's say a buyer lead calls you, or they come in online or whatever, right? You get them on the phone, they start going on and on about the home they want to buy, your eyes are starting to glaze over, right? You've heard it all before. So you say, great, let me set you up on a search, and then you forget about them, right? You wait for them to contact you back. That's typically what happens with buyer leads. But seller leads, right, listing leads, on the other hand, when a seller calls you, when a seller lead comes in online, you're tripping over yourself because you can't get out of the office fast enough to go and meet with them, and you don't even care about pre-qualifying them. You just want to go get in front of them. And what do you want to get in front of them to do? Present your value proposition, what you can do to help them, and have them sign a contract. So why do we treat buyers differently, right? Now, let's talk real quick, though, about perception. In other words, what is the average buyer's perception of us as a buyer's agent, or as an agent who's working with buyers? And if you guys haven't stopped to think about this in a while, this is hugely important because these are the myths that we have to dispel. Because the average buyer's perception of us is that we are the magic person with the key. We're the person with the magic key to open the door, right? That's all we are, right? We're just a means to an end. They also think that we're just the tour guide, right? We're going to make it easy for them to go out and see these properties. They also think that we're not needed because they can go on Zillow, they can go on Trulia, right? They can go on Realtor.com. They have all the same information as we do, or so they think, right? But the reality is the MLS was unlocked to them 10 years ago. So if they've got access to all the properties, if they've got access to all the information, why do they need us, right? And because of that, we're only going to add to the cost of the sale. And guess what? They'll probably get a better deal if they just go directly to the listing agent. And because we have no value, then all of a sudden, what objections do you get from them? Well, they want us to rebate back part of our commission because they did all the work. They found the property. All we did was show up and open a door. And because of that, they think we're overpaid. So you can see that the buyer's perception of us as a real estate agent working with them on the buying side is not very good. But these are all myths, right? This is what we have to dispel. And if we don't meet with them first, we can't do that. And if we can't do that, they're not going to sign an exclusive agreement to work with us. Now, if we look at buyer leads, what are the most common sources? So here's where buyers mostly come from. They're going to come from your SOI, right? Your sphere of influence. They're going to maybe be a past client. Maybe it was a sign call. Maybe it's a seller who's now buying. Maybe you've met them at an open house. Maybe they were referred to you. Maybe it was an internet lead. Now, if you look at these sources of leads, right, these most common sources of buyers, some of them we've known, right? So if they're part of our sphere, if they're a past client, if it's someone who we've listed their home and now we're representing on the buying side, we know them. We have a relationship. But open house, referral, internet lead, sign call, we don't know them. So the question is, if we look at these sources, which would we want to come to the office for a consultation first, right? Which are the ones that are the most important that we meet with ahead of time before we do anything? All right, it's a trick question, duh, right? Everybody. It doesn't matter whether we know them or not. Just because they're part of our sphere of influence doesn't mean we get to cut corners, set them up on a search, and operate in that manner, right? Because we have to distinguish. We have to set ourselves apart from how they may know us, from church versus our business relationship. Same thing with past clients. Just because they've done business with us before or they bought a home 5 years ago doesn't mean that they understand everything that's going on in today's world or they even remember the process. So let's go back to that jump and run example that I shared with you. Jump and run meaning you get a sign call, you run out, you show a property, or you set someone up on a search and you run out and you go show property. Let's imagine a little bit of a scenario here real quick. So let's say a buyer lead calls you and they want to go see a new listing that has just come on the market. And you're thinking, yes, I've got an excited buyer, it's a hot property, I'm going to jump and run and go and show them this house, right? So let's say you go and show that property and they fall in love with it and they want to write an offer. Now I'm assuming that this isn't one of your own listings, but let's assume that they fall in love with it and they want to write an offer. And you're thinking, oh, that was easy. Score, right? So you write up the offer, you submit their offer to the listing agent, and then you find out that, oops, not only did your buyer loved it, but many others did as well. So you find out that there's multiple offers on the property. So of course you've got to deliver this information back to the buyer. What do you think just happened to their excitement level? Well, it probably went down a little bit. But guess what? We haven't lost the property. We're just now in a multiple offer situation. So we get that multiple offer counter back, asking our buyers for their highest and best offer, which what does that do to buyers? It drives them up the wall, right? It's the most frustrating thing for a buyer, which is to get that highest and best counter. So you've got it, and their excitement level just went down again because you don't know what the magic number is going to be. You don't know what the terms need to be, but here you are, right? So you get them to give their highest and best. You submit that back to the listing agent, and then guess what? Ouch. You find out that they didn't get the property. They chose another buyer, and you can't tell them why. You don't know what the magic number had to be. You don't know what they would have had to do to get that. So here's the question. In that example, right, in that jump and run example, what are the odds that this buyer would actually want to continue working with you in the future, right? You got all excited. You went and showed them a property. You thought you had a slam dunk, and here all of a sudden you've got a buyer that's extremely disappointed, right? What are the odds that they're going to say, yeah, okay, why don't you be our agent? Pretty darn low, right? That's why when you jump and run, you only have a 25% conversion rate because that's what happens. You pretty much just showed them that you have no value. In fact, you just showed them that you're going to, have them lose out on properties. So same thing with a search, right? What happens when you get that call, when you talk to that buyer, and you set them up on a search? Well, here's all that does. All it does is it shows that buyer that they can get all the same information that you have on their own. And what it does is it basically reinforces their belief regarding your lack of value. So you get a buyer lead, they're going on and on about what they're looking for. Well, newsflash, they've already been online. They're on Zillow, they're on whatever site they are searching for properties. So you then go and set them up on a search connected to the MLS, and they very quickly realize that, hey, wait a minute, these are all the same properties that we're already seeing. So you then just reinforce your belief that you have, their belief in you that you have no value, and that they've got all the same information, right? That's the challenge, right? That's why jumping and running doesn't work, and that's why just simply setting a buyer up on a search doesn't work, right? So here's why it's so important that we meet with them ahead of time before anything ever happens. Because number one, it allows us to set expectations for the buying process. So it doesn't matter whether it's their first time buying a home. It doesn't matter whether they've done it in the past with you. It's still important for them to meet with you first. Now, here's the reality. As agents, we do this every day, right? We take for granted how complex the actual buying process can be. Now, just a little caveat, a little side note. When I say that I want to meet with them in our office, yes, our office is the ideal location, because when they come into our office, they're coming in to do business, right? They're not coming here for anything but, doing business. If our office is not near them, or if it's not near where they're buying a property, then I'm okay going and meeting them at their home, right? Just like you would with a seller on a listing appointment. That's fine too. Now, worst case, right, if they can't come to my office, if I can't meet them in their home, I'm okay meeting them at a neutral location, say a Starbucks. What you cannot do is trick yourself into thinking that you can do a buyer consultation at a property that you're showing, right? Because that's the easy path that a lot of agents like to do. They say, okay, well, I'll just jump and run and go show them this house. It's vacant, so while I'm there, I'll do a buyer consultation. It doesn't work that way, all right? So you want to meet with them first, ideally in your office or their home or a neutral location, never at a property. Now, the second reason why it's so important to meet with them ahead of time is because it allows you to determine their personality style. Hopefully, you guys are familiar with the DISC, right? The D-I-S-C. I know you've probably heard that before. But what happens is when you get to meet them ahead of time, you get very clear on who they are and how you need to treat them, right? They speak French, you speak French, right? They speak D, you speak D. Now, I'll give you a little trick. If you want to know very quickly over the phone what their personality style is, you can ask them one simple question. I call it the magic question. If you just simply ask them, please describe the perfect home for you, their answer will tell you who they are. What's a high D going to say? Well, I need 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 1,800 square feet. What else do you need to know? Okay, we know who we're dealing with, right? How about a high I? Oh, we're looking for a great house. We need a fantastic kitchen. We love to entertain. In fact, our friends just love to come over, for gourmet dinners. Our old home that we lived in was actually owned by a baseball player, and everyone would walk in and tell us how much they loved our house. That's the high I, right? That's the response you're going to get. You get that S, right? That steady, that amiable. What do they say when you ask them to describe their home? Well, we just want a really pretty house in a nice neighborhood. Are you sure you have time to show us anything? Are you sure it's okay if we go out on a weekend? We don't want to interrupt your family time. We'll work around your schedule, right? That's the S, right? But now we know who we're dealing with ahead of time. And how about the C, the compliant, the analytical, right? All those engineers out there, right? You ask them to describe the perfect home. Here's what it's going to sound like. Well, we need a home with at least 1,532 square feet for an average price per square foot not to exceed $176, and we'd like it to be energy efficient. And, we want to see the HOA documents on each home prior to seeing it. And by the way, who pays to have the survey and the geological reports done? In fact, I've put together a spreadsheet here of 27 homes that I've been analyzing online that I'd like to go see, right? Whatever you think of that person, whatever, it doesn't matter. We now know who we're dealing with, right? But you don't know that unless you meet them ahead of time. And then the third point is when you meet them ahead of time, it's your opportunity to lay the groundwork for the road ahead so that the buyer doesn't get upset or frustrated with the process or with the current conditions. So what does your market look like right now? Are you in a hot market with low inventory where things are selling very quickly, where it may take 2, 3, 4 offers until they get one to stick, right? What's happening with interest rates, right? You can lay the groundwork. Because if you don't do that and someone gets out and all of a sudden experiences the frenzy where a lot of markets are in right now, all of a sudden they're going to be frustrated, they're going to be upset, and who are they going to blame? They're going to blame you. But if you can set their expectations, you can alleviate some of that. And then number 4, how about this is your opportunity to educate buyers. Not only do you educate them about the homes they might be seeing, such as traditional sales and short sales and REOs, because guess what? They're online, they're looking up all these words, all these things, right? And it's our job to explain the process. But what we can also do is we can explain how new construction works. I don't know what it's like in your market, but if I have a buyer in my market here in San Diego and they go and view a new construction project without me, guess what? I don't get paid. So I've got to educate them that, look, if there's new construction, I'll take you there. If I take you there, I can represent you. If you go there without me, guess what? I can't represent you. And no, it doesn't cost you more money to have me represent you, right? And then on the right down on point 6, it's the perfect time to share with the buyers how you, as an agent, work to successfully help them purchase a home, right? You can go over your hours. You can go over the best way to reach you. You can explain who's on your team. You can explain how you're going to be researching and previewing properties for them. And then lastly, when the buyer comes into the office, right, when you meet with them first, what that does is it demonstrates you are the professional, right? You're the professional. You're the doctor. They're the patient. And when they're meeting with you, they're saying, I'm a serious buyer, help me. So by sitting down with the buyer in your office, going over the process, that will give them confidence in your abilities. And then most importantly, the buyer will be committed to you, right? Taking that time up front with the buyer will absolutely differentiate yourself from the competition. And I'm going to get to that here in just a second. But think about it. What I've already said is 95% of agents out there, what they do is they set up a search and they wait for the buyer to contact them. We're going to show them that we're different, right? We're going to show them that we do something different. In fact, you know, we're going to dispel their myth that they have access to everything online, all right? So what is your value as a real estate agent? In other words, why should a buyer hire you? All right, now, what we're going to talk about now is probably the most important part of today's call, because we're going to talk about your value proposition. And I want you guys to get very clear on that, because again, if you can't clearly explain your value proposition, they will not come and meet with you. If they don't meet with you, they will not sign a contract. But here's our value proposition. The reason why buyers choose to work with us is because of our proactive marketing techniques we use to help them find a home that's not yet on the MLS or on the market. Think about this, right? Think about this. In every neighborhood, there's a homeowner out there who's thinking about selling their home that's, you know, not yet for sale, right? Because by the time the for sale sign goes up, that seller has been thinking about selling their home for at least 90 days. Do sellers just wake up and say, all right, honey, it's time to get the home on the market, get the sign out there today? No. Sellers are no different than buyers, right? They start thinking about it 3 to 6 months before they actually put the home active on the market. The question becomes, what are you doing to find those sellers? What are you doing? If you know that you have a buyer looking in a certain neighborhood, right? And yeah, maybe there's 2 homes on the market that they already know about. What are you doing to find the next 2 homes that are going to be coming on the market? Because in every neighborhood, there's someone thinking about selling that's not yet on the market. Think about it. On top of that, did you know that in every market, there's actually a pretty large percentage of homes that sell privately that actually never show up online? So I'd probably say it's as high as 10 to 15, maybe even 20% in some markets of the real estate that sells, it never shows up on the MLS. Therefore, it never shows up on Zillow. It never shows up on Trulia. So Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, did you know that by shopping online, you're only seeing 80% of the actual inventory? Think about it. Do for sale by owners always show up online? No. Do probate sales always show up online? No. How about properties that get sold because an agent's at a pitch session sharing with someone about an upcoming listing, and another agent hears it and says, oh, I know someone, and they put a deal together? Did that show up on the MLS? Probably not, right? Same thing with sales within your office, agents networking, or properties that are selling down at the courthouse. Do those all show up online? No, right? So going back to some simple scripting, write this down. Write down this very, very simple script to demonstrate value extremely quickly. And I'm going to go through a lot here in just a second, but write this down. If I could share with you what we can do to help you find a home that's not yet on the market, where you could avoid the competition and get the best deal possible, is that something that you'd be interested in, right? If I could share with you how we could find you a home that's not yet on the market so you could avoid the competition and get the best deal possible, is that something that you'd be interested in? Well, how are you going to do that? Glad you asked, all right? Think about this. why do we have a marketing plan for our sellers but not for our buyers, right? So when you go out on a listing appointment and you meet with a seller, the seller always is going to ask you the question, what are you going to do to find me a buyer? What are you going to do to market my home? And the answer is your value proposition, which is why they hire you. Why do buyers not ask that same question, right? When was the last time you had a buyer say, so tell me, what's your marketing plan to find me a home? They never ask the question because they assume that it's just all on the MLS. They assume it's all online. This is where the opportunity is for us to show value. This is where we have to inject ourselves and share with them that we have a marketing plan to find them a home that's not yet on the market, where they can avoid the competition and get them the best deal possible. Now, what does that marketing plan look like? It's simple. And what we call it is our exclusive buyer plan of action. Or you can call it whatever you want, your exclusive marketing plan for your buyer. I don't care. All right, but we have a couple simple things on that marketing plan. All right, so if I as an agent know that in any given neighborhood there's someone who's thinking about selling that's not yet on the market, what can I do to find those buyers? Well, write this down. Number one, the first thing you're going to do on your marketing plan is you're going to door knock, right? You have the ability to door knock that neighborhood looking for someone who's thinking about selling or who knows of someone who's thinking about selling in that neighborhood, all right? So that's number one. The second thing you can put on that marketing plan is you could telemarket, right? You could actually call through that neighborhood, again, looking for someone who's thinking about selling or knows of someone in the neighborhood who's going to be making a move. Now, you can't reach them by door, you can't reach them by phone. Number three, write down direct mail. You can send everyone in that neighborhood a letter letting them know that you have a ready, willing, and able buyer who's thinking about buying, and if they're thinking about selling, to call you. What's the fourth thing you can do? Well, as an agent, you could go and research for the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years any properties that have been on the market that didn't sell, that expired or canceled or withdrew, and you can go and contact them and see if they might be interested in selling still since the market's hot without the hassle of putting their home back on the market. How about number 5, for sale by owners? Don't you think if you're going to be calling, door knocking, direct mail, expireds, you're going to probably come across a few people that are selling by owner that may not be showing up on the MLS? Yeah, that works. All right, how about number 6? You could go to, if you have a local area pitch session that gets together on a weekly basis, you can go there and let all your colleagues know that you've got a buyer. Does anyone know of any listings coming up in that area? Number 7, you can write down your own office team meeting or your own office intranet where you can market that you've got a buyer with certain needs and wants. Or number 8, why don't you write down contact the agent who farms that neighborhood. Go through and for the last year, look at who the dominant listing agent is. Reach out to them and say, hey, I've got a buyer. Who do you know that's going to be selling their home? Let's make a deal happen without the hassle of having to put it on the market. So you can see very quickly that we now have an 8-point marketing plan to help our buyers find a home that's not yet on the market so they can avoid the competition and get the best deal possible. So what happens when you share this plan of action with buyers? Question, do you think they actually are hearing this from other agents? Do you think other agents are telling them that they're going to go and do this for them? No, absolutely not. So if they hear this from you, which is something completely different than what they're hearing from other agents, which is nothing because other agents just set them up on a search, might they not then go and tell their friends and family, hey, you're not going to believe what this agent is willing to do for me? And most importantly, when we're implementing our plan of action, guess what we're really doing? We're leveraging this buyer to go find more listings, right? Gary has the three L's, right? Leads, listing, leverage. No, buyers don't show up in there because buyers don't typically have leverage. But guess what? This is the way that you can leverage a buyer to find more listings. And on top of that, if you go through this plan of action, right, if you commit to doing this for that buyer, might they then not agree to commit to work exclusively with you as their agent? Do you think now it would probably be very easy for them to say, okay, yeah, if you're willing to do that for us, we're willing to work exclusively with you? Does that not just right there take care of that conversation? You bet, right? So as you can see, it's not magic. It's just doing the work, is doing what we know to do, all right? So this material, this is what I teach in Mega Buyer Agent Skills, right? I go through all the cutting edge scripts, the dialogues. I share with you our whole playbook on what we do to have maximum conversion so you can boost your confidence, knowing what to say, knowing how to say it. Also, I learned how to maximize your time and productivity through goal setting, through time blocking, because again, if we're going to be implementing this plan, don't you think you need to start time blocking? You have to set time aside to do that, right? And on top of that, what about the objections that come up with buyers? Not just around the buyer-broker agreement, but throughout the whole process. I will share with you our playbook on what to say, how to say it, our full 20-point presentation, which outlines the key elements for successful buyer transactions. So I hope what you guys heard today was valuable, right? I hope you guys took great notes. This call was recorded. You will have access to it. So if you want to go back and listen to it, you can. Also, I would love for you to join me next week when we launch our next session of Mega Buyer Agent Skills. We launch it Tuesday, June 14th, 1 o'clock Central Time. It's a 16-week course, 1 hour each week of material just like this. So if you think about it, that's a lot of information that we share with you. The good news is all the calls are recorded. They're available for playback at your convenience. Now, here's the cool thing. So just because you guys showed up today, which I respect and I appreciate you for doing that, usually the 16-week course is $396, right? However, if you sign up today, and we'll send out a link for you to do so, you can save 20%. So you save almost 80 bucks on it. So in reality, this course is dirt cheap. There's no other way to think about it. So I want to open up the call to you guys. Also, if you want to sign up, you can go to matsgroupcoaching.com. The promo code is there, save 20. But I know some of you have questions about the buyer plan of action. I know I covered a ton of material, in today's call, but I wanted this to be valuable for you guys. But you can either send us a question through the chat box on the screen, or just simply raise your hand and I can unmute you. But I want to leave this last 5 minutes for you guys to hear what questions you have. Hey, and guess what? It's a great way to advertise yourself, right? You never know who might have a referral out there for you. All right, don't be shy. I saw some of you raise your hands and put them down.
Hey, Aaron, this is Chris. We have a question from Rachel. She asks, how do you handle out-of-town buyers that cannot meet but want to get listings before they come to visit?
That's such a great question. So you do a presentation via Skype, right? You can do a webinar just like this. There's a lot of programs that allow you to do that. But even if they're out of town, we're not going to shortcut the process because they need to understand our value. And the only way to do that is to meet with them. Now, could you do a conference call? Sure. Do you have to do it via Skype? No. But it's nice for them to be able to see you or for you to be able to control what they're seeing on their screen. So great question. Out-of-town buyers, you still need to explain the process. Best way to do it is face-to-face via Skype, if not via conference call. Does that answer the question? I think it does. All right, who else? That was a good one, by the way. Any other ones in the chat box, Chris?
Not in the chat box. Guys, enter them into the question. You should see a field for questions. That's actually where we can see even better. Or, like Aaron said, you can see that little hand in the upper right-hand corner of your dashboard. You can click that, and we'll know that you have a question as well.
Hey, Jerry Incandela, I'm going to unmute you. Tell everyone where you're from, Jerry. All right, you're unmuted, although I don't know if your mic is working. No, not hearing you, Jerry. One other quick tip I'm going to give you guys. So when we have our marketing plan, right, when we tell them we're going to do this, it's very, very important that we then back it up. And the way that you do that is very simple. So if we're going to be door knocking around a neighborhood, we're going to actually show them the flyer that we leave behind, sharing with them that we've got a buyer, who you are, what your story is, right? When we're telemarketing, we're going to let them know, hey, in the neighborhood, there's 200 homes. We got phone numbers for 100 of them. In fact, we talked to 30. Here's what they said. When we're going to send out a direct mail campaign, we're going to ask what their address is so they can get the letter the same time the neighborhood does. If we're going to be calling the expireds, I'm actually going to send the whole list of expireds to them and say, hey, just so you know, these were the properties that never sold. I don't know if anyone on here is still interested, but I'm going to find out, by the way, of these, are there any that you really like? And I'll make sure that I go after them extra hard. So just a quick note there, make sure that you do back up what you say you're going to do.
Aaron, we got another one. This is from Kristen. How do you handle a buyer who has signed an agreement, which includes a fee, but then wants to back out of the fee at offer time?
Well, they can't, right? They signed the agreement. Now, the good news is, now when you say fee, I'm not sure if you're referring to like a transaction fee or a commission, but obviously the commission is paid by the seller. The reality is, so I need more clarification on that, Kristen, if you're asking about a transaction fee. Noel, you're asking a specific question on, do we have them sign a form that allows us to give their information to neighborhoods in the market? So typically, I'm not giving out anybody's information. When I send out a letter, when I have a little flyer, I'm just giving a very broad, John and Christy are our clients. So I'm not giving out specific information.
Great. Kristen writes us back, it's a buyer's fee that she's referring to.
Yeah, so if they have a concern about the buyer fee, then and they want to back out or try and get that erased, then I'm just going to look at the offer. I'm going to look at if we can credit them back closing costs, from the seller. I'm going to try and then just negotiate that into the deal somehow to alleviate that specific concern. But if they're asking for that fee to get waived, then there's probably something behind that that I'd have to dig a little bit deeper for. Maybe they feel they're not getting a great deal. Maybe they want some closing costs, covered. I don't know, but there's going to be something behind that they're asking. But here's what I want to ask. William, you asked, what if a buyer wants to interview many agents before meeting with you, and they want to see homes first? Look, I'm running the process, right? I'm choosing to work with the client, not the other way around. And remember this, if you generate, you do not have to tolerate. If you lead generate every day, guess what? You don't have to tolerate working with people that don't respect the process. So if someone wants to go see property before meeting with me, well, I have to be very clear. Is it a skills issue? Is it a scripts issue on my end, right? Am I not having an effective conversation for them to see the value to meet with me first? Or do they just want to be, do they want to do it their own way, and do they not want to respect how we work? If someone doesn't respect how we work, I generate enough leads where I can choose not to work with that person. I hope that answers that question.
Great. Looks like we heard back from Jerry. Can you see his question?
I can. So Jerry, your question was, how about investors that are at high price points, $1 million and above? They're well-versed in buying properties. Do you treat them exactly the same? Yes, absolutely. We have our standard operating procedure. And especially with investors, they need to understand what we do, right? Because I want that investor to work exclusively with me. I want them to be clear on the value that I bring. Because if it's an investor, and they're buying a property, and especially if it's a flip, I want to ensure that I'm also listing that property, so they need to be crystal clear about our value. So absolutely, we're meeting with them. Everybody, nobody, there really are no exceptions. The only time there's an exception is if it's a seller who's buying, and I'll do the, when I'm at the listing appointment, we'll do the buyer presentation right there, so it's all done at once. But no, there are no exceptions. We meet with them first. They sign a contract. Period. Again, the philosophy is you're going to treat every seller or every buyer the same you would treat a seller, right? You're going to go meet with them. They're going to sign a contract. Same thing with a buyer. If they're unwilling to do that, then you have to be clear if it's a scripts and skills issue on your end, or if they're just going to be, disregard, what we do and how we do it. And is that really a buyer that you want to work with, right? If you are extremely good at your scripts, you understand your value proposition, and they do not want to come and meet with you, is that someone that you want to you'll be married to for the next 60 or 90 days? Probably not, right? Probably not. So Chris, I know we're at our time limit, correct?
We are there, absolutely.
All right, cool. And I know you guys have a lot of questions. Anything else that they need to know before we wrap this up?
No, guys, we'll email you all today a link to the recording. We will send you links to sign up. If you want to sign up sooner than that, take a snapshot of your screen, kwrievents.kw.com/NBND to actually MBAS7. I'm sorry I made a typo on that. I'm glad we're saying that. So I'll send you the correct link in the email shortly. And thank you guys so much for being on the call today.
Thanks, everyone. We look forward to seeing you on the call next week. See you, everybody.